2, maybe 3 weeks even, to the teachers simply communicating, even if it's asynchronously. And then start to formulate what the icebreakers in that exchange might be, so that each teacher can prepare their students for that. And one of the questions that arises quite often is the students will ask, well, they're so used to sort of expectations and rubrics and knowing, oh, I need to write, 50 words, or I need to speak for 2 minutes. And we left that unstructured, but one of the things we said is shorter is better, so that it took the pressure off to write a lot and to say a lot. I think all of that is important to do as part of any orientation. And also, I think that the teachers need to really think about what are their objectives. I shared with you my objectives for the initiative, but if we continue for years to come, I would want lots of teachers to weigh in on their objectives and it be a much more collaborative thing.
Okay.
I hope that answered the question. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
See another hand up. Mandumbe, did you have a question?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Judy, for your brilliant presentation. I have sent 2 questions in the chat box. The first one was related to global citizenship. I asked, the question was how to deal with some aspects that have a religious or cultural issues. Sometimes, if we want to deal some problems like, for example, caste system or some religious practice that are backward, it might be very difficult. Sometimes we face cultural or religious barriers. How can we deal with these issues with our students without shocking? The second one is related to using interdisciplinarity to deal with some aspect at the school level. For example, me, I am a high school teacher. I'm teaching in public school in which we have different subjects. The official language in my country is French. So how can we manage at the school level to deal with these kind of activities? Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think, let me take the second question first. So I think the fact that the language that your students primarily speak is French, am I understanding that correctly? That's something that I think in the initiative that I started this year, we focused on English, but in future years, we want it to be multilingual for students who want that. And that's one of the reasons that we took on that narrative atlas piece, because it had the ability to do simul translation for students. And that was an advantage. We'll see how well it works. We're still working through it, but at the moment, it seems to be pretty good. On your first question, though, that's a big question. And I'll give you a couple of examples that might be useful to you to think about. I'm sure one of the reasons you asked about caste is because in one of the posts that I shared, you probably saw that students, I believe from India, referenced the caste, and they were talking about it there. And in the United States, actually, my own students read a new book out by a woman named Isabel Wilkerson called Caste, which deals with it in a much more global way. And so it came up a lot. On another level, for example, we had a school involved with the initiative that was in Russia. And when we started talking about human rights and challenging things you thought were perhaps not just of your government, the school in Russia pulled out for exactly that reason. And that was very concerning to us because, if anything, we wanted open-ended discussion. That said, there was no way to control where the students took the conversation. In other words, we weren't censoring students. We were trying to ask open-ended questions, and there was a kind of code of conduct that you shouldn't say anything that would offend or would harm, and all of those sort of norms were established. But what a student sitting in the Philippines might think would not offend might in fact offend someone sitting in another country. So it's a very big challenge. And this is where the teachers that were also posting alongside the students weighed in when appropriate. Probably the best example is one of our active schools in the initiative this year has been from Myanmar. And as you know, if you follow the news and what's going on in Myanmar, there was real concern from the teachers there that students would very naturally ask them, are they okay? And what's happening in Myanmar? And the teachers involved were very concerned that students would in some way jeopardize her students by getting them to say anything that might be harmful to them or their families. That was, so certainly we messaged that out to the community writ large, but again, it was challenging to control. And fortunately, everybody observed that, but the reality is that it could have gone badly. We don't know. I think doing global exchange in that respect is a little bit of a high wire act, that if you let students participate in the content and the questions, then you really have to hope that they are kind and respectful and that they understand that what you may think is not okay, or you may think is okay, may not be okay as a point of debate or discussion for someone from a different land or a different religion or a different race or a different background, and that you have to be mindful of that as you frame what you say. Let's be honest, that's a life skill that these kids need to learn. And in a way, the best way to get them to think about it is to engage in it and learn a little bit from trial and error as to, what will land well with their colleagues and what will not. So I know that was also a little long-winded, but hopefully answered your question.
I'm really satisfied. Thank you so much. Great.
Thanks, Mandu.
Thank you very much.
Were there any other? Yeah.
I think that the two people who said they were going to go, I don't see them in the list here.
Right. So maybe they'll email.
I can share it.
Okay.
So Judy, you want these educators, and we'll share with the others as well, to contact you via email if they want to join in your project? Or what is the best?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
and I can certainly, I'm not at the point yet where I'm thinking clearly about next year, but we will start to very soon, I'm sure.
Okay. Is it possible to join the project this year?
Yes, absolutely. But the reason I say that Mandubu is, or Mandube, I apologize for mispronouncing, is that I suspect some people will be too far along in their year and not want to do that till next year. But either way, we can do that. So just shoot me an email and I will happily tell you how to do that. I already heard from a couple of people today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great.
Well,
Judy, I have a very kind of specific and technical question because I'm really interested in the platform. So the uploading of videos, does the platform like streamline all that so people can upload via messages, public text, and videos?
So if it's a self video, meaning I'm taping myself saying something, it happens right in the platform. As you're writing, you just click on a camera. It uses your computer camera and it loads it right away. If you upload a video from another source, what I really like about that platform, which the say a Padlet, et cetera, don't always use, is if you put in the link, not only does the link appear, but the thumbnail that you click directly on to get to the video appears, which is really great. Unless it's from a sketchy site or something like that, in which case it won't work. But for the most part, that's been really good. And that I've been really pleased with.
That's awesome. I like that. And then I have another kind of technical question. Is it ever a case where people can buy individual accounts, or is it like a whole school-wide or district that needs to
No, so we bought it as a school account. Well, we haven't even bought it yet. So as I told you when we were in the pre-session, we got a free try it out kind of thing. So the organization, I'll put this in the chat, that oversees Narrative Atlas, which created it, is this organization in Virginia called MapWorks Learning. And the two people who run it are Kent Lewis and Christopher Dubia. And they're terrific. And they started Narrative Atlas because they were doing global exchanges and wanted a self-contained thing. So at this platform. So at this point, I think they've been very generous and they're really trying to get more global involvement. And there's no, like if you go on the website, there's no price list or anything, because they seem to just negotiate it. And I think to get schools involved, they're very accommodating. So just, definitely reach out to them.
Okay, thank you. This was so wonderful. Did anyone else have a last question for Judy? She's been so gracious about staying on with us.
Prakash wrote one. I guess it could be our last question for the day.
Did I miss that?
No, I think he just wrote it right now, or he said maybe you answered how to frame questions to enhance. I think you've answered it before as well. Critical thinking and problem solving skills. Right.
And yes, I mean, in one way, I would say for myself, I use a version of that QFT, the question formulation technique. If I am designing a question for students and I know that I can Google the answer, that's not a critical thinking question. I can answer part of it through Google, but I can't put the pieces together without my putting the pieces together or doing it collaboratively. That invariably, almost always, I would say 95% of the time, yields a question that involves critical thinking, which, depending on the nature of the question, also pulls on problem solving skills. I'm not big into kind of this notion that there have to be multiple perspectives on a question. Sometimes there aren't going to be multiple perspectives on a question. But if students can have meaningful discussions about the ways to approach the question, which is a different matter, then I think you are getting at very high level critical thinking. And I think certainly in a world where, we've all written, if we're educators and we give students assignments, we've all written questions where we get back the same answer from every student, right? Which is so frustrating, right? As teachers, we're like, oh, I've read that 5 times. How many more times can I read that? And so it's really incumbent, I think, on us to say, if I'm asking my students to do this, now put the hat of a student on, how would I tackle this question? the students reflexively will go to the computer and look for the answer. It's not that they're cheating. It's that that's the skill that's almost reflexive for them to use. So we have to accept that they're going to do that, but then know that they can't securely, single-handedly find the answer that way, that they need to pull on multiple resources and or connections that they have to make in order to make it a richer question. So
They have to speak in new ways, make new connections with new ideas to basically go out of their small world into a bigger world.
right. I mean, as
Sorry, I muted you by mistake. Sorry.
sorry, that's okay. I'm acutely aware of the fact that, it's getting harder for me to remember names or information. The beauty of the world we're living in is when I forget a name, I can quickly Google it in the moment and get that back on track. My students are using Google for a kind of different version of that same thing, right? So if we accept that that is a tool in our toolbox, then we have to say, okay, if kids are using the tool, then how can we get them to use it in a more sophisticated way? And that's where the critical thinking comes in.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Well, I think if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and kind of end here. If anyone had a final thought that they wanted to add, please feel free.
Just want to thank you, Judy, for coming.
No problem. And I saw that you recorded, so I would love to get the link for
Oh, I
that.
have it. Yeah,
recording.
already ready.
Okay, just put it in the chat and I will grab it. That would be great. Or you can email it to me, either one.
Yeah. Let's see. That's it. I will get it in the chat. I'll email it to you if I can't
Okay.
get it because it's opening slowly. But it's all on YouTube. You're live. I mean, you're already.
Oh my
know.
God, that's terrifying.
You're on YouTube already.
I do the same thing with my students and some of the stuff we do, and it's so intimidating to see that, but there we are.
Okay, everyone. Well, enjoy the day, the night, or whatever this is for you guys. And thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.